We constantly hear from both religious leaders and governmental leaders that Islam is a religion of peace. Is it really? Our special guest today was a professor of Islamic history at Al Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt. He says that the history of Islam is a river of blood. Greetings in the name of Jesus, our blessed hope. I am Dave Reagan, Senior Evangelist for Lamb and Lion Ministries, and I am delighted to have with me this week a very special guest by the name of Mark Gabriel. Mark is a former professor of Islamic history at Al Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt, the world's premier Islamic university. Mark, let's begin by talking about your upbringing in Egypt. Were you born and raised in Cairo?
No, actually I was born in south part of Egypt, and my family was moved to Cairo when I was almost 14 years old.
Oh, when you were 14?
Yes.
Okay. Were your parents strict Muslims?
They are.
Very devout. Not the secular type of Muslim that we often encounter in this country.
No.
In fact, you had an uncle who was an imam, wasn't he?
He's a clerk, yeah, Muslim clerk, and imam also.
Wasn't he the one who first began to inspire you to memorize the Quran?
Yes, he took me when I was 5 years old, and he started helping me memorizing the Quran.
And is it true that by the time you were 12 years old, that you had the Quran memorized?
Absolutely. I spent almost 7 years exactly to finish memorizing the entire book.
Now, Mark,
Yes.
I have a copy of the Quran that is about
Yes.
that thick, and
Yes.
it's in very small print.
Yes.
We're talking about quite a lot of material there.
Exactly. The size of the Quran actually is exactly like the size of the New Testament.
So you had a book, the equivalent of the New Testament in length, memorized by the time you were 12 years old.
By heart, absolutely.
And you
yes.
had it memorized in classical Arabic, right?
Exactly, because the language of the Quran, it's classic Arabic. It's not dialect Arabic.
It's not the Arabic you speak on the streets.
No, absolutely
And
not.
probably at the age of 12, you didn't understand all that, did you?
No, even when I finished my secondary school, only when I start to really, my high school, I start to recognize the meaning of the verses of the Quran and the
Yes.
teaching of the Quran. But it was a development, you see, from the time I finished the Quran when I was 12 years old till I finished my bachelor degree. From time to time it was a development taking place in understanding the meaning of this
Yes.
book. But when I finished my bachelor degree, I was already have the proper understanding of the meaning of this book.
Now, why was it important for you to memorize the Quran as a child? Why did anybody put any importance on that? Is that something important in Islamic society?
This is actually, it came as culture. Mainly, it's Islamic culture. And it wasn't just from the past 10 years or 50 years. It's from the very early time, the first century of Islam. Muslims start to take care of giving the Quran from generation to generation.
I see.
By memorizing the book by heart.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, were you ever exposed to any Christians while you were growing up, either missionaries or Coptic Christians, the basic Christianity of Egypt?
Absolutely. I saw Christians living in my neighborhood, living in my country, Egypt, as minority. But the things that Christianity in Egypt didn't have really the power to influence Muslims. And this is the reason why I wasn't influenced by this type of Christianity during all my life, because the Christianity in Egypt is so tradition.
Yes.
More than 90% of Egyptian Christians, they are tradition.
A very liturgical type
exactly.
of yes.
But there is one incident happened when I was a little child with a Christian priest from that church. What happened in that time really was left a huge influence over my spiritual life.
Tell us about it.
I was really become very upset and very angry, you see, of Christians and the Jews because of the teaching I started to receive every day in my school, especially when I was in my secondary school at Al Azhar Islamic Institute. So one day I decided really to fire the Christians, and so I find a Christian priest in that church was using the road outside of my house, going from his place to his monastery every day. So every day I stand in front of my house and I start to just hit him with the stones and with, you see.
How old were you at that time?
And that time I was 13 years old.
And you're throwing stones at a Coptic priest?
Absolutely, and I injured his head. I injured him in his head terribly, and they took him to the hospital. But this man, when he get out of the hospital, he just came just to find out what's going on with me, why I'm treating him that way.
He came back and found you?
Yes, yes. And he know my house, he know my family even. So anyway, this man, he didn't came to revenge or to treat me in the same way, but he came to advise me that there is a fire inside me, and that fire is going to burn me before burning others. Wow. So, and he came to show me, or to tell me that he forgive me. Even I injured him and I caused big injury to him. He just came to show me that he loves me, he forgive me, and he said there is no reason for you to hate me or to treat me that way.
That really impressed you, didn't it?
Absolutely. This was really influenced my spiritual life, even when I grow up and I become one of the best students in my university.
Now, you were basically sitting on top of the world as a person who was a professor of Islamic history at Al Azhar University. You were also a Muslim imam at a mosque in Giza, right?
Yes, Giza City, yes.
I mean, you had all the prestige in the world, and yet one day you made a comment. I think I had it marked here. It's in your latest book, Jesus and Muhammad. You were a person who questioned things, and you were told at the university, you don't question. You were told that.
Exactly.
You don't question. And you kept questioning. And one day in a conversation with colleagues, you made this statement. We say the Quran is directly from Allah, but I doubt it. I see in it the thoughts of man and not the words of God.
Absolutely.
And the moment those words came out of your mouth, you knew your fate was sealed, right?
Absolutely.
What happened that night?
This was happened in a meeting between me and other professors from the university, and they just met with me and they discussed what is going on and what they heard from the student. They was think that I've been under pressure of foreigner influence or Christian influence, or so they just want to find out why I'm doubting Islam, why I'm just so. And I said that this statement to them.
And then what happened that night?
They become very upset. They kicked me out of the university. They fired me. The university fired me. And in the same day, in evening time, I was kidnapped by Egyptian secret police because they accused me that I converted from Islam.
What happened to you after that arrest?
They put me in the little cell in the headquarters of Egyptian Secret Service in the middle or the center of Cairo. They put me for 3 days with no food, with no water, and in the 4th day they start to interrogate me. They took me to one of the offices, maybe it's in the 6th or the 7th floors, and interrogating me during a day. And that 4th day they start giving me food and water, and because they want to stimulate me and just want to get information that they can. And they find out during the day they cannot just get what they're looking for. And they start interrogating me during the evening time. So the evening time, it was the time of torture. With cigarette, they burned me with cigarette in different places in my body. And you can see here in my hand. They beat me. They put me in cold water. They put me in a little in a tank full, you see, filled with water, and they put hungry rats inside that tank, and they put me inside the tank.
So you had rats
for
crawling
whole
over
night,
you? All night?
Whole night, and the rats just swimming over the water, you see, around my head. And
did the rats bite you?
No, no, at all.
This is like Daniel in the lion's den.
And the next day they took me out, and I was just surprised that I'm still alive, but I don't know what is the next. So, and after that they put me in a little cell with a vicious, hungry dog. And when they put me in a room and they closed the door, and I sit in the middle of the room, and I was thinking that I'm going to be beaten by the dog. Dog, it will eat me, it will. So, but I was surprised when I found the dog. He just came and sitting in my right-hand side.
In fact, he licked you on the ear, didn't
And
he?
he licked me in my ears. And
They must have thought that you were Satan or something to have such power.
They said that. They said that this is a human being or something else. They wasn't really. They believe that there is some spirit or some.
So at that point,
unseen power. Yeah.
didn't they decide to just turn you over to some guys in a cell and tell them that you had renounced Islam and let them kill you?
Yeah. So this is the understanding that I've been questioned by professors at the university. I've been fired by the university. To them, mean this guy, he's just out of Islam now. He's convert now.
In fact, they wanted to find out what missionary had converted you, didn't they?
Exactly.
And you hadn't been converted.
Exactly. No, I have no idea about Christianity in that time.
Yes.
About Christ. I never even discussed Christianity. But automatically in Egypt, when someone decides to leave Islam,
yes,
they will accuse him automatically that he became under pressure from church or some Christian and he converted to Christianity.
Well, how in the world did you get out of that situation without losing your life?
I was crying before the God who was created me in that time. I wasn't know who is.
Yes.
And after 15 days, my uncle, he was working as the vice president of Egyptian parliament. He was visiting Russia at that time. When he came back and he heard about my kidnapping, and so he came with permission from the government, and he came with his car and he took me out of the prison.
So you got out of prison due to the political influence of a relative who had been out of the country.
Absolutely.
And then when you went home, I understand your father tried to kill you.
My father, he tried to kill me later, after 1 year searching for God, find out who is God, you see, till I received a Bible from a Christian pharmacy. So when I start reading the Bible, I start to find the truth about Christ. After I give my life to the Lord, I lived 1 year, whole year as a secret believer.
So
when my father heard about my conversion, he shot me with his own gun. He tried to kill me.
So you were given a Bible by a Christian pharmacist, and that brought you to the Lord.
Yes.
And when that happened, your father decided to kill you for the honor of the family, I guess.
Because, yeah, he just felt there is a shame going to be over him and all the life, or the family, even the community.
And so he shot at you several times and all the bullets missed?
No, one bullet missed me, about maybe 5, 6 bullets.
I understand that your sister finally got your passport, got you out of the country, and where did you go?
When my father, he just shot me and tried to kill me, I was running away from his faith, and I went to my sister, and in my sister's house, I put the whole situation in front of the Lord, and the Lord showed me to get out of Egypt in the same evening, same day. My sister helped me. She brought my stuff.
And where did you go to when you fled?
I fled to South Africa by the road, traveling from Cairo to South Africa for 3 months over the road. And I was the first Egyptian who did overland journey between Cairo and Johannesburg the trip take almost 3 months.
Okay, and so then you get to South Africa, and did you meet some Christians there?
Yes, in South Africa I met with many Christians, and many churches, they start to hear about my story because the public media in South Africa, they wrote articles and published articles about my story. And
Is it true that assassins were sent to South Africa to kill you?
Absolutely. In South Africa, especially after I wrote my first book in South Africa, and my activity became very well known, and Muslim community, they felt they threatened by my activity there, and by this book was released there in Johannesburg in 1996, and they tried to end my life there few times.
This religion of peace, just because you question Islam, this religion of peace kidnaps you, tortures you, tries to kill you, and even sends assassins to kill you in South Africa.
Yeah.
That's some religion of peace, isn't it?
Yeah, this is how the world really been deceived by the media, by the world media, the secular media, by Islam. It's not religion of peace.
And tell us, when you arrived in South Africa, you said you met some Christian friends. In fact, I think you lived with a Christian family for a while.
Yes.
But let's just back up for a moment, because I know you became a Christian before you left Egypt.
Egypt, yes.
What appealed to you about Christianity?
Before I met with Christ, I lived for 34 years under Islam, believing in Islam, serving Islam, learning about Islam, teaching about Islam. And I lived another year without faith after I find myself, I'm already out of Islam. So I lived for 35 years searching for peace, searching for the true God who is going to show me that He loves me more than anything in this world. Through the Quran, through the teaching of the Prophet of Islam, I was never experienced something like that. So when I get the Bible and from the doctor pharmacy, before I get the Bible, I lived for a whole year searching for God, asking myself who God can be. I had terrible headache. Every day go to the doctor pharmacy to get headache tablets. So, and finally she gave me the Bible and she gave me the headache tablets. I took the Bible in one hand and headache tablets in another hand. When I started reading the Bible, I met with the Lord Jesus Christ face to face through the Sermon of the Mountain in Matthew chapter 5, telling me about love. Love your enemy.
Not kill your enemy.
Not kill your enemy. So the word of the Bible, the word of Jesus Christ, and that evening came to me is just like a beautiful rain.
And so you began to find the peace that had eluded you all those years.
Exactly. For peace, forgiveness. I felt for the first time that my sins has been forgiven.
Hallelujah.
And I being justified already by the blood of Jesus. I was lived for 35 years with guilt. The guilt of my sin, the guilt of living as a lost person. I don't know who going to forgive my sin. I don't know who going to rescue me from the punishment of Allah. I do have no assurance that I can be in the right place, you see,
Actually,
to live the eternity.
In Islam, you never really know for sure whether you're saved or not. Muhammad didn't know whether he was saved or not.
Absolutely not.
Isn't that something?
Yes, this is true.
Now, very quickly, we only have about 2 minutes in this segment. When you finally got to the United States, you were given religious asylum in this country.
Yes.
And you had a remarkable experience in Washington, D.C. when somebody said that there was a Muslim imam who was going to be speaking at a university.
George
there.
Mason University.
And you went to hear him speak.
Yes.
And what did you find out about
I
him?
went there, I shocked, I thought this man, he was a Baptist pastor from Texas.
A Baptist pastor from Texas?
Yeah, and he converted to Islam. And he now preaching, you see, for Islam in George Mason University and sharing his testimony. So, and after he finished his speech, he asked if there is anyone he has question to raise his hand. I find my hand was the first hand. So when I stood up, I did ask him, sir, when did you take that decision to leave Christianity to become Muslim? He said, 8 years. I said, oh, this is like myself. And my next question, since you convert to Islam and you left Christianity, did any church or any Christians order to kill you because the Bible said that the penalty of Christian apostasy is death? He said no. Did the FBI persecuted you here or arrested you here or tortured you here because you left Christianity to become a Muslim? He said no. I said to him, sir, I'm a human being like you. And I have the right to take a decision to change my religion or my faith like you. And I was a Muslim like you. I was an imam as you was a pastor. And I took the same decision you took. But the difference between me and you, that I was treated by Islam. I fired from my university. I kidnapped by the secret police. I've been tortured. I lost my family. I lost my country. And the sword of Islam is on my neck wherever I go. Why? Because the Quran said so. That the penalty of a Muslim apostasy, it's death.
That is an incredible story. And in fact, folks, there's something about this particular story that he did not mention, and that is that when the man stopped speaking and asked for questions, he was the first to raise his hand, stood up, and first of all identified himself as a former professor of Islamic history at the university. And the imam was so impressed by that he said, oh, honored professor, please come up here and take over the podium. And the next thing he knew, he was on the stage at the podium in charge of the whole meeting. Absolutely. And asking him questions.
Yes.
Isn't it amazing how the Lord works?
Exactly.
And showed immediately that the difference between Christianity and Islam, that he leaves Islam and everyone tries to kill him and kicks him out of his family. He leaves Christianity and none of that happens to him. And yet Islam's supposed to be the religion of peace.
He's still enjoying his life in America because of the freedom brought to this country through the Christian and the biblical principle.
Yes. You know, the point that you made a few moments ago about no one in Islam knowing for sure whether they're ever saved or not,
yes,
unless they die as a martyr.
Yes.
Then they have the assurance of salvation.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, there's no assurance. Even, again, Muhammad did not know for sure whether he was saved or not.
Yes.
That is a horrible thing to think you're
Yes.
having to earn your salvation, and no matter how hard you work, you still don't know.
Exactly.
You still don't know.
Exactly. This
What
is true.
What a glorious thing it is
Yes.
that to encounter grace. Grace.
Absolutely. I was questioning, the doctor pharmacy was giving me the Bible after Muslims, fanatic in Egypt, attacking a Christian church. I was so upset. I was so little baby Christian. I did ask her, why people you can defend your church, you defend your people. What she said to me, she said to me, Mark, I want to say something to you. Our God, He is not in need for us to defend Him or to kill others to defend Him or to defend His church. Our God is strong enough to defend Himself, His name, and His people.
Mark, most of our viewers have never read the Quran, and they don't know really how different it is from the Bible. So fill us in. Give us a comparison here between the Bible and the Quran.
Yes, the Quran, as Muslims believe, considered the holy book of Islam. The size of the Quran, it's exactly like the size of the books of the New Testament. And the book contains 114 chapters.
Which are called surahs.
Which called in Arabic term, Arabic language, surahs.
Okay.
Exactly. And the book is considered, as the Muslims believe, the word of Allah, who was revealed directly from Allah to Muhammad through the angel Gabriel.
Okay. Now, how does it differ, though? I mean, an average person, let's say an average Christian, has read the Bible, and he's aware that when you start reading the Bible has lots of stories, and it tells this story and that story, and the relationship with God, the nature of God, is taught through stories. But you don't find that in the Quran.
No, actually, the Quran wasn't really organized logically. And when the Quran usually discuss about a specific story, for example, like the story of Abraham, or the story of Joseph, or the story of Moses, you're going to see that these stories, it's in all over the Quran.
All over.
So you
like
have
somebody shot a shotgun. And
exactly, exactly. And the Quran, even when they translate the Quran into English or another foreign non-Arabic language, they just transfer the meaning of the Quran, you see, to the English or another language. But even even you try to study the Quran, learn about the Quran from the English translation, you're going to miss more than 60% or maybe 70% of the real meaning of the Quran.
I find it one of the most difficult books I've ever tried to read in my life because it is so disjointed. It just, there's a sentence here and then the next sentence may not have anything to do with that sentence and the one after it may not have anything to do with it. It's like in American literature we have what's called stream of consciousness writing, where the person just writes whatever pops into his mind, and he may be talking about a carnival here and about going to church there and whatever, and it just has no relationship one to the other. It's very difficult to follow.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, the Quran is supposed to be the words of Allah.
Yes.
The Hadith is another book in the Islamic theology. What is the Hadith?
The Hadith, it's the word of Muhammad. In other words, the Hadith, it means what Muhammad said and what he did. So it's just, what you call it, it's the record of Muhammad.
Okay.
His life, his activity, his word, his action, his teaching, and the Muslim call it Hadith.
So one, the Quran, is supposed to be the words of God.
Yes.
The other are the words of Muhammad.
Hadith, it's the word of the Prophet Muhammad.
And are they considered to be equal or what?
Muslim, they are required to believe in the both books.
Okay.
Muslim, it's not enough to just believe in the Quran and decline or deny the Hadith. According to the Islamic law, if any Muslim going to deny any of the basic teaching of Islam, he will be convert, he will be out of Islam. And hadith, it's one of the most basics you see in Islamic faith.
Okay. Now, another difference between the Quran and the Bible is that the Bible was written by individuals like Moses or Paul in the New Testament, where they sat down, they wrote letters or they wrote histories or whatever. But Muhammad never did really just sit down and write the Quran or write the Hadith, did he? No, he just simply, for example, with the Quran, he was usually in trances and he would make statements and people would write those down.
Exactly.
And all that was compiled later on after his death, wasn't it?
Exactly, yes.
And the Hadith is just statements that were compiled by compilers. It might be statements that wives remembered or friends remembered or whatever, and they just kind of put them all together.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Now, in the Quran, there are a lot of contradictions, as well as in the Hadith, a lot of contradictions.
Yes.
For example, you can find verses in the Quran that talk about loving Jews and Christians.
Yes.
And treating them with respect.
Yes.
Then you can find verses that talk about killing them.
Exactly.
How do you account for these contradictions? Did Allah change his mind?
A Muslim, they justify this contradiction by Arabic term, and Muslim and Islamic principle, they call it naskh. Naskh or nask. This principle means that the future verse going to come, it's going to decline or cancel the what you call it, the previous verse.
Okay, so a later verse,
yes,
would cancel out an earlier verse.
Exactly. This
that
is,
might contradict with it.
They call it naskh. If you ask them, but why Allah do that? They will say He do that for the benefit of Muslims and for the benefit of the human being.
For example, I remember you giving an example about alcohol.
Yes.
Give us that example.
Exactly. Like, for example, when Muhammad started to preach about his religion, the people in Arabia at that time, they was alcoholic addicts. They loves alcohol. They cannot live without alcohol. And he finds it's going to be too difficult if he's going to give them a command to stop drinking alcohol and to obey his command. So what he did, he just gave them a halfway command. He said to them, no problem, keep drinking alcohol, but when you're going to come to pray to the mosque, you have to stop drinking alcohol till you finish your prayer, and after you finish the prayer, you can go back and drink alcohol again. So after a while, he came back to them and he said, no, this doesn't work. No alcohol going to be allowed anymore. And another verse came and cancelled the previous verse. And Muslims, they become very upset, very angry. But how come? We can't do that. And a later verse says, okay, don't worry. Be patient. Believe in Allah. Believe in His Prophet Muhammad. Believe in His Quranic word. And if you're going to have the ability and you're going to stop drinking alcohol in your life, Allah, He is not going to forget that. He will reward you with a river of alcohol in the paradise the day when He's going to send you to the paradise.
So we go from just drinking alcohol occasionally to not drinking it during prayers to not drinking it at all to you're going to have a river of alcohol in heaven.
Exactly. This is the development of the contradiction, you see, of the teaching of the Quran.
And you find the same in the attitude toward Jews and Christians.
Absolutely.
At the beginning, it was one of respect and honor, and then when they did not accept His revelation, He turned against them and began to argue, you must kill them.
Absolutely. Firstly, it was a development also was taking place in this subject, in His relationship with the Jews and Christians. Firstly, He started to adore Christians and Jews, saying a wonderful thing, people of God, the people who carry His word, the people who protect His word. And later, He said, yes, you are these people. But listen, I am the final prophet, came with a final testament. You have to believe in me. Means He started to debate them and reaching out them. So they refused. They asked Him sign. The Quran says so. Ask Him sign. Give us a sign that we can believe. So, and He cannot give a sign. And he went back to Allah and cried before Allah, help me to perform miracle or to give sign to these people that they can follow me. And Allah became very upset with him and said to him, okay, listen, go back to these Jewish people and these Christian people. Tell them Allah gives you plenty miracles in the Old Testament, and always you rebels and against him. No more miracles. It is only one way: to submit to Islam, to accept Islam, or to pay the tax. And if you refuse to do so, you will be killed. So it was development also taking place in this, you see, in this contradiction of the teaching of the Quran toward the Christian and the Jews.
Hey there. Subscribe to my channel. And also press this bell icon.